And welcome back. I am here today with Maria with Forsyth Law Firm. How are we doing again today?
Good. Glad to be here. How are you?
Good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on estate planning. We'll sprinkle in some real estate law,
Okay.
I think.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So the first question that was brought to us is, how can you assist with estate planning and property inheritance matters?
That is a great question because
It is huge.
It's a big question, and most people's biggest investment is their home,
Right.
and a lot of people want to know the best way, cheapest, best, most efficient way to pass that kind of property onto their heirs. And there's a lot of talk right now about trust and a revocable living trust. I actually saw Susie Orman was selling them herself, which
Oh, wow.
I know. And I don't know how she's getting around the unlicensed practice of law issue, but that's not my problem.
Nope.
But it was just very scary to me because if you don't, have a qualified estate planning attorney and good tax advice, it could cost you or your heirs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And why is that?
Well, I can't give tax advice, but there are some very major tax implications when you transfer property into a trust versus leaving it to your heirs through your will. In general, not giving any individual advice to anybody because I can't give tax advice. I know a lot of people know that a married couple, their principal residence, if they've lived in it for 2 years or more, when they sell it, there's a big exemption they can take under federal tax law. If you put that house into a trust, and pass it to your heirs, you don't get that exemption. So you're giving away, let's say $500,000 tax-free money. Wow. That you might have been able to take advantage of. That's just one of the issues that's involved in it. Another issue that's involved is generally when people pass property like that through the will, through the probate process, their heirs get a stepped-up cost basis. So the value of the property, and in general, like I said, I'm not giving advice, talk to your CPA about it. But in general, I believe that when they inherit it, whatever the value of the property is on the date of inheritance is the new cost basis. So if somebody's been in the home a long time and there's been huge gains in the value, all that is gained by your heirs and it's tax-free. That's my understanding. Mm-hmm. So that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax-free money that if it's not transferred properly, either you or your heirs are going to miss out on.
Wow.
And then there's times where it does make sense to put a house into a trust. So you really, really have to get a qualified estate planning attorney, along with a CPA and probably a financial planner, all in a group together to have a long conversation about. There's lots of moving parts to do this. It's not like you can order the $99 one and do the transfer and you're good. There's just a lot of implications that can cost a lot of money if you just try to do this on your own or try to do it without multiple professionals weighing in on it.
So if somebody was interested, what's the process look like to kind of, meet with you? And do you offer free consultations? Like, do you have people on, that are part of your circle within, CPAs and all that?
Yeah, I do. So you would just either email the office. We would schedule. I do have a free initial phone call, kind of like a discovery call. And I get some information from the client. And then after that, we schedule the initial full consultation, which can be a couple of hours long, depending on how complex the estate is.
Right.
And then once we have that meeting, we can determine what other professionals we need to call in. So if somebody has their own CPA they already work with, I'm happy to work with them. Their own financial planner, I'm happy to work with them. If they don't already, then I do have people that are local that I trust that I've used over and over again, and I've gotten good results from good feedback from clients that these people did a good job. So I can always recommend them as well. And, of course, people that you work with over and over again, the process is a lot more streamlined because, you know how each other's work.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's see. We have another question. based on asset protection. So what strategies can be employed to protect assets from creditors or legal disputes during estate planning?
There's a lot of different ways to do that potentially. Some of it will have to do with how you title property. Another thing to look at is how it's held as a legal entity. So like trusts, generally there's certain types of trusts that have their own tax ID number. They're considered a separate legal entity than the individual. There's also LLCs. I have a lot of real estate investor friends who put their investments in LLCs, and they run their businesses. Usually it's a short-term rental, long-term rental, and they run it as a business, and that gives you the corporate veil protection, that limited liability protection of an LLC.
Right.
So those are just two ways to protect assets. And there's a few more. It can get very deep in the weeds, depending on how large the estate is and how varied the assets are and how they're titled. And sometimes we retitle things to make it either more easily to pass to the heirs without going through probate. That's kind of the one catch about passing things through a will that go through probate. Usually the creditors have a chance to make a claim against the estate. But if there aren't any creditors out there, very little, that it may not be a big issue for everybody.
Certainly could be.
Yeah, it could be an issue. That's why you want to have the hour-long or 2-hour-long consultation to go through all the moving parts because everyone's estate plan is going to be unique to their family organization, the way their family's set up, what kind of assets they have. So everyone is different. Everyone's unique. And that's why we take so much time initially to get the big picture of what all's involved. And then we can bring in, a financial planner because I can't give financial investment advice, or a CPA because I can't give tax advice. But I can say, hey, these are the legal documents that you can use to transfer these things. Now we got to turn to the CPA to see what is the tax consequences of using this document, because it would be different in different situations.
Okay. And obviously what legal structures are most effective for business succession in the context of estate planning? We're looking at LLCs. Is that correct?
Yeah. And here again, it goes back to the specific way that if a business is set up, there's multiple ways that you can form a business entity. And an LLC is one of those. You can just have it incorporated. There could be nonprofits, things like that. So there's different strategies you can use depending on how it's formed. Basically, it comes down to an operating agreement, which is how the basic framework for how the company's run. Who's in charge, who does what happens if one person dies or passes away or gets ill, what happens to their percentage ownership in the company. All that is addressed in an operating agreement.
Yeah, I think we spoke about that last time, how incredibly important that is, especially when you have a business partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's also a partnership agreement, and those, they can be very complex depending on, it can be simple or it can be complex, but you definitely want to have some documents in place.
Okay. So say somebody, has a business partner, they're basically 50-50, basic stuff, 45-year-old males, whatever.
Right.
What would be kind of a recommended course of action there that you could think of?
Well, I'd want to meet with them together and see how the entity's formed, because if it's an LLC, you want to take a different approach than if it's an incorporated business or if it's a partnership. And there again, we probably need a CPA involved because all those are taxed differently. So it's not a simple process. You want to take the time and make sure you have a strong team of professionals advising you. Like I said, the $99 when you get off the internet, I would not advise anyone to do.
No, rhymes with Peagle Boom, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to say the name.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about charitable giving and philanthropy. So how can estate planning incorporate charitable giving, and what are the benefits of doing so?
Well, first of all, it's the personal benefit that you're helping people in need. It gives you, feeds into your life purpose, gives your life meaning. It's that part of it's, very wonderful for people to do, to leave a mark on the earth that's positive and helps other people. That's wonderful. Also, as pretty much everyone knows, when you donate to charity, there are tax benefits of doing that. And there's lots of ways we can do that with estate planning. Probably the most basic would be in your will. You can either specify a certain dollar amount to a specific charity, or you can specify a percentage of your estate to a specific charity. It's really, when you're drafting the will, everything we do is customized to that particular family, that particular client. And when you do it that way, you can create it however you want. You can be as creative as you want to. And you have full control over what happens to your money after you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Do you see more charitable giving than giving to children and heirs and all of that?
Most common I see giving to heirs.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people, especially people that don't have children or don't have nieces or nephews to leave it to. Those type of people, I often see them leave it to charity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that usually is meaningful to them.
Yeah. What types of charities usually?
I've had a lot, believe it or not, that go to animal and pet charities.
That makes sense if they don't have children, yes, because it's their fur babies.
Yeah. And, the Humane Society donations, pet rescue organizations. I see a lot of that, which, it kind of warms my heart because I'm an animal lover.
Uh-huh. Same here. All right, good. All right, so let's pivot a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about the real estate side of things.
Okay.
All right, so this question came in. How can you help with title searches and resolving title issues?
That's a big part of being a closing attorney. Part of our job is to make sure there's clean title, that the new person that's buying it is getting clean title to the property. And we're very thorough about that, because potentially if I don't do that, it could be malpractice, and I don't want to risk anything getting anywhere close to malpractice.
Yeah.
So I'm also a title insurance agent for title insurance companies. So when I get a closing, I get the contract from the real estate agents usually. It comes in. I have all the information about the property. Then I hire a third-party title examiner to look up the property itself. They do a thorough examination. They look through all the records. They go back as far, many years as I tell them to, and they come up with a report of the chain of title, how it's passed over the years, and if there's any, what we call a cloud on title. So that would be like a lien or, something that would make it not a clean title. And if something comes back with a cloud on it, then we got to figure out how to clear that. A lot of times, probably the most common thing I see is a tax lien. It's either property taxes, or the IRS or the state of Georgia has put a tax lien on a property. And that's pretty easy usually to take care of. We just pay it off. We either pay it off, have the buyer or the seller pay it off before the closing, or we do that as part of the closing itself. Take a part of the money out of the closing and pay that off.
Okay.
And that clears title for usually, and then the buyer then gets clean title at that point in time.
That's creative, and that's good. I mean, I certainly think things happen, and sometimes liens do happen.
Yeah.
Being able to use money from the sale to take care of that is a good thing.
Yeah, and once we do that too, the buyer's protected, and honestly, we're protected because we do get title insurance at that point. So the title insurance company is basically saying, hey, if you buy this policy and any problem with title ever comes up again, we will go to court and fight for you. We will, at our expense, make sure that you're protected. And that's why a lot of people, that question comes up a lot. Why, do I really need title insurance? And I would say yes. It's usually, depending on the value of the property, a few hundred, maybe $1,000, maybe if it's a really high dollar property, a couple thousand. To me, it's well worth that investment to protect that property.
So, okay, so what exactly does the insurance cover again?
If there any problem with the title ever comes up after you buy that policy, they defend. If they will protect the property. They will go, if they have to go to court to fight for it, they will do that at their expense. I'm trying to think of, I haven't ever had to file a title insurance claim, so I'm, kind of at a loss of what the different cases would look like. but they will do whatever it takes basically to ensure that you remain the owner of that property.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, it's worth the money. It's
Wow.
it's a very little payment for a big assurance.
Okay. All right, so this is for questions for our real estate developer investors and all of that. So can you provide guidance on real estate investment and property development?
So I'm not an investment advisor, but I do know a lot of people in the area locally that are real estate investors.
Mm-hmm.
So probably my biggest strength, and I personally am a real estate investor and am a member of some, particularly women's real estate investor clubs. So I think probably my strength with investors and developers is connecting them
Mm-hmm.
to people who own land, who want to develop land or are looking to buy land. It's basically a networking thing. I don't give investment advice to people, but like I said, I have a lot of investor clients that are like, okay, I have this property. I'm using it as a long-term rental. How can I maximize this as far as keeping it out of creditors' hands and getting the best tax treatment on this property? And then I can help them, give them advice about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't say, hey, buy this property because it's a good deal. I'm not qualified to tell people that.
There's a group for everything, isn't there?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Female investors in the Metro Atlanta region.
Yeah. There's one that's nationwide.
Yeah.
And there's actually multiple smaller ones locally. I think there's one in Alpharetta. I'm not sure if there's a Cumming one. But there's one in Atlanta for sure.
I think you need to start the Cumming one.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
There you go. That's why I get paid the big bucks. All right, so let's see. What strategy? All right, so last question. We're actually going to go back to estate planning.
Okay.
How can trusts be used to kind of safeguard the generations to come? So we've got a government. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. It's all one aisle, if you ask me. But they're constantly trying to do whatever they can to kind of mess with us and things that we own in this supposed to be free and fair country.
Right.
So where do trusts come in? Explain it to a dummy so that I understand more about how this all works.
Yeah. So from people approach trust with different perspectives. My perspective is, how do you pass your assets to your heirs in the most efficient way? Some other people's perspective may be, how do I protect it from creditors, or how do I keep it private from the government? But from my perspective as an estate planner, when a trust is helpful, so trusts are generally private. If you don't look at the tax consequences, or you've looked at them and they're not going to be a problem for you, you can draft your trust so that your assets are all in the trust and they pass to your heirs, and it's a private process. They don't have to file anything with probate court. They don't have to put a notice in the paper to creditors like you would with a will. It's a nice way to transfer property and keep it private. But you definitely need to look at the tax consequences before you decide to do that. Generally, I tell my clients, and this is very general because every family is different, but if you have a property that you're not going to sell in your lifetime and you want your heirs to inherit that, generally a trust is a good way to do that. I'll have an example. I think we might have talked about it last time, but I had an elderly client who had a bunch of shares of Coca-Cola stock that she inherited from her parents. And, she always talked about her Coca-Cola stock. She was never going to sell it because she inherited it, and her purpose in life was to transfer those stocks to her heirs. So in her case, not addressing any tax issues right now, to pass that on to her heirs privately would make sense in most cases. Like I said, it's. I don't want to sound like I'm giving advice to anyone to do that. They really need to come in and talk to me, bring in their CPA before they decide to do any of that. Mm-hmm. But that's just one example of how a trust can can be used to the family's benefit from an estate planning perspective.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jeez Louise. So how much is that Coke stock worth now? That's my question.
I don't know. She was in her late 80s, and it was a gift from her parents, and I think they bought it like in the 1930s or 40s.
Holy smokes.
So it was worth a lot of money.
And they're just going to keep transferring it and never... Do they understand the purpose of owning stock is to make money from it at some point in time?
Well, it had divided so many times that it had, I don't know the numbers that were involved, but it was like a house, like real estate. It was like that much valuable to them. It had grown so much over the years.
Yeah, of course.
And I think too, we talked about that stepped up basis. It's my understanding that stocks have a similar type of thing. If you inherit it, their basis, the people that inherit it, their cost basis is stepped up as well. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I understand. So I think when she was 88, if she had sold it, her capital gains would have been huge.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I think she's like, I'm not going to pay all that in capital gains. I'm just going to let my heirs have it, and they get the stepped up cost basis.
Yeah.
Which is what she did.
Okay. Still pretty neat.
Yeah. There's some nice, really great tax saving strategies, especially for taxable estates, which in the federal realm of law, that's over $12 million. If your total estate's worth $12 million or more, there's a lot of very cool tax strategies and estate planning / tax saving strategies that they're totally legal, but you just have to have the knowledge and the know-how to know what to do to set that up, and you can pass significantly more than the $12 million to your heirs using these advanced estate planning techniques. I don't use them a lot because I don't have a lot of clients that are that wealthy. But if you are that wealthy, definitely, you need to have some professional advice. You probably already have people on staff if you have that much money.
Right.
But definitely there's some great planning strategies. They're kind of fun to figure out because you can be very creative with it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and you're saving, hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, potentially.
All right, so let's say you live in Milton.
Okay.
And you don't have these people. How can they find you? Because obviously you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, they can go to the website, www.forsyth, without an E on the end, -law.com. They can email me, Maria, at forsyth-law.com. They can call me. I generally don't answer if it doesn't register as somebody that I know because I get so many robocalls. But they could call the office number, which is 770-781-2576. We're also on Facebook as the Forsyth Law Firm and Instagram as the Forsyth Law Firm.
So they can slide into your DMs
there. Yeah.
And you can always come and visit our BNI that meets every Wednesday morning at 8:30 at the Lanier Tech. We are the BAG.
Yes.
Center.
Yeah. And that's a great place. I would recommend anyone who's in business to come visit. Just give us a heads up you're coming, and you get to meet lots of people that are in the community, growing their businesses, who are interested in helping other people grow their businesses. So, networking, they say it's not what you know, but who you know. And, there's some truth to that. And BNI is a great way to take advantage of that.
I would agree. I also think it's the quality of the person that you know.
Yeah.
And the quality of the group that we're in is top notch.
Yes. Yeah. And you get to, I like all the extra activities you do outside of the meeting because you do get to know people. And, you feel comfortable once you get to know someone and trust someone, you feel comfortable referring your friends and family to them.
Yeah.
Because they'll do a good job and they're an honest person.
I agree. All right. Well, that sounds good. It's been a good episode. I think we got a lot of really good questions answered.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, it's my pleasure, and we'll look forward to next month's episode.
Okay. Awesome.
I think we're going to make this a monthly thing now with you.
Awesome. I love it.
I love it. I love it too. All right, take care, guys.
Thank you.